refrigerant. And we're going to do that on a machine that's set up specifically for this. We've got an expansion valve. If you can look over here, you can see an expansion valve set up. That means we're going to be charging by subcool, and this air handler, as we go up, we can see the evaporator coil and we can see the fan. That's set up for 410. Over here I've got my electronic gauges I'm going to use. They're connected to this condensing unit, and we've got our clamps connected, and we're going to be taking some pressure and temperature and amperage readings as we go. So all these hoses are connected and we're pretty much ready to fire up. We are going to weigh this in. Before we get started, I want to show you that I did take the nameplate, the data plate off so that we can look at what the manufacturer has to say about this. This manufacturer of the condensing unit has told us that this unit should be subcool charged at 11, approximately 11. That the amperage we would expect on this condensing unit on the compressor is going to be about 9 amps, and then we're going to be expecting about 5 pounds of refrigerant. That would be good for 15 feet. We have less than 15 feet, so I'm expecting we're going to need a little less than that, or right about. So before I turn on the unit, I want to try to get as much refrigerant in the system as I can. This system has been pulled down into a vacuum. It's prepared, it's ready to receive refrigerant, it's electrically ready to run. So I can turn that on, but I want to do the safety first. I get my glasses. I'm not going to wear the gloves, but I want to show them to you. These are the rubber gloves that if you're working in refrigerant, as opposed to leather gloves that'll soak up the refrigerant and burn your skin, you might want to wear the rubber gloves, always the glasses. So we're going to turn this machine on in a minute. I do have the thermostat ready to go. We're going to keep it remote just as it would be on a wall. So let's get our stuff fired up here. We'll get our electronic gauges turned on. These are set to 410. I've already adjusted them. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my scale. We always weigh in or weigh out refrigerant, always. And my temperature meter. We're going to be measuring the temperature of the air going in the evaporator and the air leaving. That's our split. That's part of our performance testing. So I've already opened the 410 can. It's on the scale. I can zero the scale. We're good to go here. Before I turn the machine on, I can see I'm still in a vacuum. So it's still, everything's holding, it's not leaking. I'm going to go ahead and open the high side line, which is going to put liquid through my red hose right into my liquid line. So we might see it on our scale as we let it in. We're in ounces. I'm going to change it to pounds. So that's half a pound. Remember, we're shooting for almost 5 pounds. So that's about 1 pound going in. Now that's going straight into the liquid line. That's where it's going to go anyway, so that's a good place to put it. The reason I'm doing this is this allows me to turn my compressor on with refrigerant in the system. If we run our compressors while they're under a vacuum, they overheat very quickly. So I want to make sure I'm protecting my compressor. Okay, so I've got 1.7 pounds. We're probably going to get 2 in there. We'll keep working on that. Only my liquid line is open. It's not going through the suction line because I don't want to fill my compressor with liquid refrigerant. Only the liquid line. So I got 2.2 pounds. It's still taking it, and I know it needs close to 5. There's no reason for me to slow this process down. Once I turn the compressor on, I cannot put it back into the liquid line. So I have to go through the slow charge through the suction line. So it's much quicker for me to do it this way. It saves a lot of time in the field. I've got 2.8, almost 3 pounds in. So we're just going to let that keep happening, see where to go. We've got pressure on our gauges. It doesn't really mean anything at this point. Now we've got over 3 pounds, 3.2. I'm actually going to stop it right now by turning off the gauge. And we have 3.56 pounds of 410 refrigerant in this system, in the liquid line, where the condenser is going to send it anyway. Now we're ready to turn on the compressor. So I'll get my thermostat out. I'm going to switch it on to cool, which is going to bring on the condensing unit and the evaporator coil. So I'm not letting anything in yet. My gauges are still closed. But I am going to start getting some pressure readings. I can turn on the light. We still have 3.6 pounds in it. And we're going to start watching our temperature scale here. And we're going to see if we get any change in temperature. And we're not expecting a lot because we're low on refrigerant. We know that. If we were to look at superheat, subcooling readings, we have a superheat of 5 and a subcool of 6. That's not horrible. That means we do have some liquid in our condenser. But remember, the manufacturer said 11. That's our target, was 11. So just add a little bit. Now, because my high side pressure is now 238 PSI, I can't open it back up or it'll try to go in my can, my refrigerant can. So only the low side. And since it's 410, it has to be charged as a liquid. But we're going to charge all our refrigerants as a liquid. That's just a better way to go. We don't have to wonder. I can open the low side up a little bit. I can kind of watch my scale to see what's happening. 3.8, 3.9. Okay, 4 pounds. I'm going to stop it now and let it run a minute. Because I'm putting liquid refrigerant directly into my compressor, I need to give it a second to vaporize it and pump it away. I do not want to fill my compressor with liquid refrigerant. I don't want to rush this. I will speed this process up a little bit for you, but normally this is a slower process. Take your time. Just to see where we're at, subcooling is still 4, 4.5. Superheat about the same. About 4 pounds still. We are seeing a little bit of about a 10 degree or so temperature difference across the evaporator, so it's starting to work. So I'm going to add a little more refrigerant. I'm slowly opening the suction line. I'm watching my scale. 4.1, 4.2 pounds, 4.3. I'm going to stop about 4.4. Okay, I'm going to stop there a minute. Give that liquid a chance to boil away in the compressor. See what happens before I do anything else. Let me see what's going on. Is anything changing? Yes, I can see my supply air temperature is 55 degrees, coming down. What's happening here on my gauges? Subcoolant, 3.9. Superheat, 7. Now would be a good time to take an amperage reading. So I get my amp probe out. AC voltage, put it on AC. I clamp it up here. That's going to tell me what my compressor's doing. Now the manufacturer says 9. Let's see what we actually have. Low. It should be low. It's very cool in here. If it was 9, I'd be concerned. We're running like 3.9. That's good. So, superheat, 8. Now we're not charging by superheat. We're charging for subcooling, but I check it anyway. I like to know what it is. Superheat tells me if I'm getting enough cooling back to my compressor, so I like to know. My subcooling, 3.7, 3.8. 4.4 pounds. It's time to add a little bit. 54 degrees supply, 70 degrees going in. Let me add a little more. A couple ounces at a time. 4.5, 4.6. I'll go to 4.7 and stop. If you notice, I'm not cranking this wide open. I'm barely cracking this. And that little bit of crack is making a difference on the scales. You have to have scales. You cannot do this by feel. Okay, this isn't a beer can cold demonstration. We don't do that. We do critical charging. My subcooling's coming up just a little bit, meaning that I'm getting more refrigerant in my condenser. That's a good thing. My superheat is gonna be low, okay? We've got a a very short suction line, so I expect a low superheat. And the reason that they're fluctuating is because my expansion valve is opening and closing a little bit, like it should do. 4.7 pounds, 54 degree supply air, 70 degree air going into it. That's 16 degrees, not too bad. Let's see what we got here. Go ahead and add a little more, about a couple more ounces. 4.8, 4.9. Let's stop at about 5. Okay. Now we're right about 5 pounds of 410 refrigerant in this system. It's supposed to take 5.30 according to manufacturer. So let's see what happens. 54 degree supply. It's actually coming down. On our gauges, we've got our subcooling went up to 6. That's a good sign. Our superheat is hovering around 4.7. Nothing wrong with that. Expected it to be a little bit low. We certainly wouldn't want to see a 20 or a 30. That wouldn't be good. So we're getting very close on this machine. Very close. 54 on our supply air temperature and 69 going in. It's cool in this room. I'm going to add just a little more because I'm going to add 2 ounces. Okay, that's how fast 2 ounces goes in just by cracking the machine, the gauges. And my subcooling now, those 2 ounces just made a difference on my subcooling. Now I've got 7.2 and my superheat is still about 7. So if I'm dialing this machine in, and that's what I'm doing now, this is dialing it in. Now in the field, I would give this 10 or 15 minutes in between. Here I'm going to accelerate that process just a little bit because I'm trying to prove a point that small amounts of refrigerant make big differences. So here we're looking at 5.2 pounds, 53 degrees supply air, 69 degrees entering air. Our subcooling is 8.2. I'm going to add just a little more. And we're going to watch that subcooling as we add a couple ounces. 5.4, stop at 5.5. So at 5.5 pounds, I've got a pretty good split across my evaporator coil, and that's with no ductwork. So it's blowing more air than it normally would. My subcooling just hit 9. Our target was 11. I can easily get there. My superheat is 7.5. That's fine. So let's just go up a little bit and see if we can get closer to that subcooling number we're after. We'll stop at 5.8. Already, that little bit we just added, our subcooling is climbing up. It's 10.2, 10.3. After a few minutes of running, it would probably hit that 11 we're looking for. We're looking at, see our temperatures here, 53 and 69. That's a pretty good split across the evaporator. Let me turn this off. So what we just did is we critically charged the 410 machine. We weighed it in, and we will always weigh it in, and we'll always weigh it out. If I overcharge this machine and I felt like I needed to take a couple ounces out, it would be no big deal to go get the recovery tank and simply hook it up to the hose and just push a little bit back into the tank. That is part of the process. We are dialing this machine in. I would say this one's about there. It would work fine. So that is the 410 charger.